The church is hemorrhaging people, specifically women. People are leaving the church. People are becoming religious nuns at unprecedented levels. And the other day, I was watching this woman's video. It popped up, and I was listening to it, and my daughter was right beside me. She said, Mom, what is a church? She does not know what a church is. I swear to goodness, I'm telling the truth. She's 8 years old. She will be 9, but she's never gone to church because her mother did not go to church. I am going to play this woman's video in just a moment. I'm going to share her video in just a second, but I want to talk about the religious nuns that are on the rise, the people who have opted out of religion, the ones that are like agnostic atheists, or just the people who might still believe in God, but just don't believe in going to church because the church's message doesn't align with what they believe in anymore. So this is the graph. Nearly 37,000 people responded in these 3 different timelines, 2007, 2014, and 2024. You can see the Christian line is going down. The religious nuns are going up. But the important thing to know and understand, if the religious nuns are women, women are typically the ones that bring the family to church. Even if a man says that he is Christian, if he doesn't have a wife pushing him to church, they're probably going to stay at home. The mothers are the ones that are typically the ones that bring the children to church and Sunday school. The mothers are typically the ones that volunteer for Sunday school and that kind of thing. So as the religious nuns increase, that is going to start accelerating as far as more and more religious nuns. Now let's go ahead and check out her video.
So young women are leaving the church faster than young men for the first time in history. 65% of young women say that churches do not treat men and women equally. Because 61% of Gen Z women are feminists, many of them are rejecting teachings that keep them silent and submissive. Besides that, they don't like the exclusion of their LGBTQ friends. They don't like the rigid politics on abortion. And they don't like that the church refuses to acknowledge women's lived experiences. And if this continues, this is going to be the downfall of Christianity in our nation. Because women have always been the free labor and backbone of the church. And Christian nationalism relies on women to uphold traditional family values and to transmit their faith to their children. But if these women leave the church, the entire ecosystem of the church crumbles. You're going to have fewer volunteers, fewer teachers, fewer mothers passing down faith tradition, and the church is going to be full of a bunch of men who want to lead and no one to follow. And a lot of these patriarchal churches think that they're preserving the purity of their religion by excluding women from leadership. But in practice, they're driving away the very people they depend on, women. Now, that does not mean that women are giving up on their faith and spirituality. They're just giving up on inequality. They think that if church means silencing women and demonizing the LGBTQ community, they're out. But that opens space for a different kind of Christianity, the one that's actually more like Jesus intended it to be, inclusive, merciful, and full of grace and not control. So the future of religion is either going to have to listen to women or lose them.
Here's an Axios article that just came out. It says 15,000 churches could close this year amid religious shift in U.S. Let's go ahead and check this article out. The U.S. could see an unprecedented 15,000 churches shut their doors this year, far more than a few thousand expected to open, according to denominational reports and church consultants. Why it matters. The unprecedented contraction expected to continue over the next decade risks leaving gaps in communities nationwide, particularly rural ones, where churches are often crucial providers of food aid, childcare, and disaster relief. The big picture. The decline in traditional brick and mortar churches comes as a record number of Americans, 29%, are identifying as religiously unaffiliated, and as 62% identify as Christian, down from 78% in 2007, according to Pew Research Center. At the same time, mostly non-denominational megachurches and evangelical Christianity in general are an increasing influence on American life, driven by charismatic leaders, sympathetic politicians, and social media. These colliding trends have shaken the nation's longtime religious footing. There are fewer and fewer communities built around local churches, but rising pressure from conservative citizens and government officials to inject more religion into public schools, settings, and institutions. by the numbers. The record number of church closings forecast this year stems from struggles many churches face, including retaining full-time pastors, said Rayner, a former president of Lifeway Christian Resources, an entity of the Southern Baptist Convention that provides resources for churches. In a widely shared Baptist Courier piece, Rayner, a consultant on church health, said that waves of church closings are coming and that another 15,000 U.S. churches will move from full to part-time pastors. The National Council of Churches estimates that 100,000 U.S. churches across denominations will close in the next several years, confirming Rayner's analysis. That would amount to roughly a quarter of the nation's 350,000 to 400,000 churches today. Zoom in. Mainline Protestant denominations such as Methodist, Presbyterian, and Lutheran represent nearly all church closing, said Ryan Burge, a political scientist who writes the Graphs About Religion Substack. The closures mark a shift away from once powerful denominations in the U.S. that brought people of diverse political views together, said Burge, author of upcoming The Vanishing Church: How the Hollowing of Moderate Congregations is Hurting Democracy, Faith, and Us. Burge said that as a result, many communities are left with empty church buildings that can be difficult to sell because they often are next to historic cemeteries. The number of Catholic churches also appears to be declining, partly because of the continuing following from priest abuse lawsuits, said Andrew Chestnut, the Bishop Walter F. Sullivan Chair in Catholic Studies at the Virginia Commonwealth University. Baltimore's Catholic Archdiocese, the nation's oldest, is slashing its churches by about 2/3, citing shrinking attendance and aging buildings, according to the AP. I think the only ones who have shown some dynamism lately on the American Christian landscape are these non-denominational, usually charismatic megachurches, Chestnut said. Evangelical megachurches, however, tend to have fluid memberships despite their growing influence in Republican Party politics, Burge said. The large churches have a lot of churn. A lot of new people come in every year, but a lot of people leave too because they never build strong and deep ties. Their success is based on one or two leaders, and a death or scandal can damage or bring an end to that church. Megachurches could take membership hits in the future if younger Americans feel they're being forced to accept religion in public spaces, Chestnut predicted. I think evangelicals are going to pay the price for so closely hitching their wagon to MAGA. If you're making kids pray in school, as I've learned anytime I make my kids do something, they'll do the opposite. I'm going to go ahead and put this here. Robert Morris, Texas megachurch pastor, pleads guilty to SAing a child. Now, I'm just putting this here. This dude, a megachurch pastor, a MAGA influencer as well, he got a whole whopping 6 months in jail. This is another reason why people are leaving the churches, because there's so many scandal after scandal after scandal in the churches, and these people don't get held to account. These people get to skirt for whatever reason, and I do believe that it's hurting their own reputation, but I do wonder when these people will finally get some consequences. Y'all go ahead and weigh in.